Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Welcome back. One of Special Counsel Robert Mueller's top lieutenants says the investigative team failed to do all it could have to determine what happened in the 2016 election for fear of being fired. Former Justice Department prosecutor Andrew Weissman writes in his new book that the team, quote, could have done more in its exploration of ties between Trump, the Trump campaign, and Russia during the 2016 race. In the first insider account of the probe that led to impeachment, Weissman says the team shied away from scrutinizing the president's finances to avoid being disbanded. He was frustrated by the choice not to subpoena the president. While he expresses considerable respect for his former boss, Weissman says he believes Mueller may have been ill-suited for such a politically charged investigation, and that the former FBI director should have explicitly said that the president obstructed justice. Weissman lists what he believes to be the questions still left unanswered. Among them, he writes, we do not know if he had other Russian business deals in the works at the time he was running for president, how they might have added or constrained his campaign, or even if they are continuing to influence his presidency. Andrew Weissman will be our guest on Morning Joe next Tuesday for his new book, Where Law Ends, Inside the Mueller Investigation. Joining us now, New York Times reporter and MSNBC national security analyst Michael Schmidt. He's the author of the book Donald Trump versus the United States, Inside the Struggle to Stop a President.
So, Michael Schmidt, we're getting a better picture of what exactly went on behind the scenes by the book that's coming out and also by your book, Donald Trump versus the United States, and what Woodward was saying. And you put it all together, and really we're starting to get a good view of really the battles going on behind the scenes. But there have been a lot of questions, and you write about this process, about Mueller deciding not to state the obvious, that Donald Trump committed obstruction of justice. Robert Mueller deciding not to subpoena the president and force him to sit for an interview, just like Rudy Giuliani had said Bill Clinton would have been forced to sit for an interview. Also, they got criminal referrals from the Republican Senate Intel Committee for Don Jr. and Jared Kushner. Nothing ever came of that. Tell us what you've learned from this reporting that's come out. Compare it to your book, and what's the scene look like now for you as you piece all of these different puzzle pieces together?
Well, what comes out from Weissman's book is quite a compelling, detailed, and insightful account in ways that none of us have been able to sort of penetrate and get inside of this investigation. And here you have this top lieutenant who's basically saying and just the most stark terms possible, they didn't do everything they could to get to the bottom of this. At the most fundamental level, here we are, almost 4 years into this presidency, and there has not been a full accounting of the president's ties to Russia. And you know, people have said it in different ways, but Weissman puts a fine point on that. And that's just a sort of devastating sort of thing, certainly for Democrats who looked at Mueller and looked at his investigation as something that was going to get to the bottom and answer these things. So, like many things, when the fire comes from inside, in the sense here, you have an insider, a member of the team, coming forward to speak out like this and to describe how this deputy of Mueller's, Aaron Zebley, was an obstacle to getting to the bottom of things. It just really, really tarnishes the legacy of this investigation.
Yeah, and you, of course, the most damning thing we've learned over the past month is the fact that Donald Trump's own director of national intelligence, not a Democrat, a Trump appointee, a lifelong Republican, a Republican senator, an evangelical, a Republican ambassador, left his job believing that Donald Trump was compromised by Vladimir Putin. I'm wondering if you get from this book and from all of your reporting, if you get the feeling, or if you have reporting where people that were working with Robert Mueller said that he was physically and mentally somehow compromised by health challenges, and that made him less effective.
So, as I write in my book, Mueller struggled in the practice sessions that he had leading up to his testimony. He struggled to recall basic facts about the investigation. And what's going on at this time, while Mueller is struggling in these practice sessions, is that they're trying to get his deputy, Aaron Zebley, at the table with Mueller to testify, because they wanted Zebley there to be able to answer questions. Then Mueller, the Republicans ultimately push back on that, and you have Mueller more or less testifying by himself. And if you talk to folks that know Mueller, or if you've even watched Mueller testify before, Mueller had testified probably before Congress more than any other living American, because he had been the FBI director for 12 years, testifying constantly on Capitol Hill. The Mueller that testified, it was just a different Mueller, and his testimony was not very effective at sort of establishing the facts of the investigation and being authoritative here. The struggle of the Mueller investigation that you have to look at, certainly since it's been completed, is that Mueller sort of ceded the ground in terms of the public relations on this. That allowed Barr to come in and hold his press conference and clear the president the way that he did. It allowed for the report to be taken in different directions by the Republicans. And by ceding that ground and not saying anything and not having their story out there, they have been hurt. Now we are hearing from an insider in one of the first accounts, and it's not a flattering picture.
It is Tuesday, the 22nd of September of 2020, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. Oh, yes, a small scant dash, a mere pinch of hot smoked Hungarian paprika will make all the difference in the world. Make sure it's only a scant dash, a mere pinch. You could overwhelm, and that might be overwhelming. Well, oh no, not another day of Trump. Yes, another day of Trump. And Moscow Mitch McConnell, what the hell has happened to our country? Well, we know exactly what's happened. We've been under this assault for how many decades now? Decades. The Republicans, the GOP, adopted the Soviet 70-year plan, and we're just about at 62 years now, maybe a little more even. And they're lining up everything in their proper place, and next thing we'll know, checkmate. But we're not going to let it happen, okay? We got a few rooks still on the board. And I got to tell you, the rooks are really an important piece, as you'll find out as we continue on with defending against this assault. When do we start taking the battle to them? Why are we in defense when we should be on offense? There's more of us than there is of them. Let's remember, 40% ruling over the 60%. That's not democracy. That's a prison camp. Remember that. Okay? And it looks like maybe even Attila the Hun, who would kill his brother, is the kind of politician they want. Kelly Loeffler cut an ad stating as such that she's just like Attila the Hun. She would even kill her brother to stay in power. And since the GOP is all about power, all about kicking the libs, just about what they think is checkmate. Well, we're not going to let it happen. Oh, yeah, they're going to try to push through this nominee, and they're going to try to seat this jurist on the SCOTUS before the election. Trump confessed that he's expecting to have a sitting SCOTUS in Ginsburg's place to assure that when the election goes to SCOTUS on the day of the election, that they'll just say, oh, yeah, we got a bunch of hanging chads, and you might as well be president because we say so. And they'll probably write an opinion that will say it only applies to this case, not any others, especially a Democrat. Especially a Democrat. When less than 40% rule the rest, that's not democracy. Nope. That's an icebox baby gulag. They're going to start turning the power off on us while turning the heat up with their power. How else to explain anarchist jurisdictions, huh? See, that's the problem. Anarchist jurisdictions vote. And that's the kind of anarchy that authoritarianism cannot stand. And I got to tell you, the worst kind of anarchy is authoritarianism, because that's what anarchy is. Oh, yeah, people, some anarchists, of a particular, left-leaning part of the ideology would maintain, it's just be like utopia. It'll be happy. We'll all just get along. No, we won't. We'll have warlords. The people who are the strongest advocates of anarchy will be the least capable of surviving it. Because authoritarianism is the kind of anarchy that will then rule. It doesn't matter. Some special group will get the power. And in that case, it'll be like a warlord. I sort of fell in love with representative democracy because you could come to an agreement, a consensus, without beating each other up over it. And apparently the GOP wants to beat people up over it because representative democracy is not their aim. Pure, unadulterated power. It's a drug. And I suppose maybe we need to have an intervention. Maybe we need to take them and get them the help that they need. And where would that be? Well, we have the facilities already built. They built them. Might as well put them to use. Indeed. Gunner the English Bulldog is snoozing rather loudly today. I apologize for him, because he's just a dog. But a great dog at that. Anyway, so it looks like Bill Barr and Ivanka went to what state again? To push this Q conspiracy about child trafficking. when what they're doing is really putting the kibosh on the real investigations on child trafficking. But it's a meme. It doesn't have to be the truth. It has to be a strategy to hold on to power. The point of the spear. When are we going to get off our back foot, and when are we going to go on offense? I don't care too much for the ageist argument against Dianne Feinstein, for instance. But I will say, maybe Diane's not up for the battle. Maybe Dianne needs to step back just a tad. Maybe, I don't know, keep her powder dry. Dianne, please. You're on the Judiciary Committee. You don't know what the hell is going on? Please. And I know she's friends with Susan Collins, and there's this collegial idea that everybody wants to have back in our politics, but we don't have it now. A couple of people wanting to get along is not going to get us along. It's going to put us behind once again. We extend our hand in agreement, and they kick us in the balls. When are we going to go on offense? We have the tools. We have the numbers. Oh, I know they've gerrymandered and pretty much neutered our ability in the traditional sense, but they don't follow the rules. We are being harmed because we follow the rules. Maybe a suspension of some of our purest morality might be in order here. When they go low, I don't know, a couple of strong body shots and a right cross and a left hook to the head might be in order, maybe. I don't know. A couple of body shots, then mix it up, going up top. When they go low, go high with a left hook. I don't know, set them up with a jab too, okay? For me, it'd be like a couple left jabs and a right cross. Maybe even a right uppercut. I like that one too. Boom. So, at the top, well, I should mention right now what's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. Oh, one other thing about the chowder. Roasted corn in the chowder after being soaked for quite a while in lime water. Yes, soak that baby up. In the husk. Put it in the husk. Okay. So at the top, what all of us suspected is that Mueller's group did fail to fully investigate Trump's illicit financial ties. And we knew that Mueller is quite doddering. You know, he kind of reminds me of that former senator in the beginning of the Watergate investigation that Nixon put out there to basically say there's nothing happening. And he was quite doddering himself, bordering on what back in the day they called senility. Now we call it, onset of Alzheimer's. I'm no big fan and never have been a big fan of Mueller, mostly because of his, latent bigotries and prejudices against people of color when he was U.S. Attorney in the Bay Area. Okay. So I never looked at him as being, our knight in shining armor who's going to come and save us. But I didn't suspect that the level of decline with his mental acuity would be so, acute. And apparently that's exactly what was happening, and that's probably exactly why he was chosen. And he had a deputy manipulating him every inch of the way, and I want to know more about that guy. On the rest of the menu here on the Bistro Cafe, the Manhattan DA's office cited a mountainous record of public allegations of misconduct to support its quest for Trump's taxes. What is Trump trying to hide? We all know. We do. A British man was sentenced to 5 years in prison for helping the hacking collective Dark Overlord steal info from several U.S. companies, and that would be yours and my info. And a New York police officer is charged with spying on Tibetan immigrants for the Chinese government. Well, I guess China is involved somewhere, somehow, and some way. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where Italy's right-wing opposition leader Salvini failed to make the breakthroughs he had hoped for in regional elections that showed a massive turnout of voters. Boy, that's a virus going around now, too. And Navalny demanded that Russia return his clothes for the Novichok investigation, because Russia is hiding key pieces of evidence. Why would they do that? All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. The bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, to the rightish of the page, is our chat room link, monitored by Kelly Lincoln, though she be very busy. Thank you, Kelly, for doing so. To the leftish of the chat room link at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com is the link to our Patreon page. And we only mention that is because we need money. Doesn't everybody? Yes, everybody does. And we need money because we have a civic duty to fulfill. And though the bulk of what we do here comes out of our own pockets, as Tom will inform you later on, we would still be unable to do this without you. And a few of you, quite a few, have been doing this for quite a while, and we just need more of you. It's better that way, isn't it? And we have a track record of almost 10 years of doing this. We stretch dollars. Say, how about the cost of an espresso-type coffee drink sent our way once a month? And we do. We stretch those dollars. Oh, do we stretch them. And then we go and do crazy things like pay our bills. Yeah, that's what anarchists do. Anarchy is nothing without a little bit of discipline and order, right? Not authoritarian order, mind you, but still. And anyway, your generosity has helped our ability to fulfill our civic duty. And as the founders originally intended, oh, so many years ago. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that, though he be very busy with things like escaping wildfires that want to burn down his domicile. You know, he has a family to think of, and you would think that something as egregious as a wildfire would know that, except wildfires don't. They're wildfires. Well, Tom, thank you for doing what you do in these perilous times. If you would like to follow me on Twitter, in fact, I suggest you do, because I post the show notes and links diary for the show there. And I do that on Daily Co's about 10 minutes before showtime, and then get it on Twitter and other places that are called social media. That's what I mean by there. And the show notes are a very important part to this whole endeavor, so please check them out. Okay. Follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West. And most importantly, of course, pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and maybe even Amazon. And Audible. We'll figure that one out as we go along. It's just started. Okay. Let's dive into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. It comes out of the Associated Press by David B. Caruso. The Manhattan District Attorney's Office told a federal appeals court yesterday, Monday, that its quest to gain access to Trump's tax returns is supported by a mountainous record of public allegations of misconduct. Now, these public allegations aren't just allegations in a newspaper. No, they're supported by actual court documents. You know, he's been sued and has sued a lot of times. President and the Manhattan District Attorney Cyrus Vance have been battling for more than a year over a subpoena sent to Trump's accounting firm, Mazars USA, seeking 8 years' worth of his tax documents. Attorneys for Trump have argued that Vance, a Democrat, we're criminalized. We don't have any standing, how dare we, is just trying to smear him with an overly broad investigation that has no legal basis. Really now? You're hiding your taxes? How about the legal basis about cheating on your taxes? There's a legal basis there, fella. Let's see. In a filing with the Second U.S. Court of Appeals, lawyers for Vance again declined to reveal exactly why Trump is under investigation, citing grand jury secrecy rules because there's some Russian mobsters involved. And that encompasses, some national security issues. Any investigation into the types of potential financial improprieties described above would, of necessity, require a review not only of tax returns, but source documents, working papers, and communications of the sort identified in the Mazars subpoena to evaluate the accuracy and good faith of the positions taken in the filings, as well as the role of various employees and other potential witnesses, Vance's team wrote. Trump has called Vance's investigation a fishing expedition. Really? What do they expect to catch? And a continuation of the witch hunt, the greatest witch hunt in history. And you know what? A lot of witches have been caught. The U.S. Supreme Court has already ruled against Trump once in the case, dismissing his argument that presidents are immune from state criminal inquiries as long as they are in office, which really destroys Trump's gambit to, retain power forever. Well, on the other hand, he does have a big argument to retain power beyond the 2-year or 2-term limit that's supposed to be imposed since FDR. Yeah, he's under quite a convenient some convenient issues imposed by Vlad. Yeah, I'd be a lot more afraid of that than just some puny criminal inquiry over your taxes. And Trump's legal team then tried a different approach, saying the subpoena seeking his returns was issued in bad faith. Really? That argument was also rejected by a federal judge last month, and of course, Trump appealed. Even if the appeals court decides in Vance's favor, it is unlikely that Trump's returns will then become public before the election. Any material produced as a result of the subpoena will also be protected by grand jury secrecy rules. Anonymous worker bees at the Associated Press bring us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. A British man who was part of a hacking collective called the Dark Overlord was sentenced yesterday, Monday, to 5 years in prison for helping the group steal information from several companies in the U.S., including Missouri, Illinois, and Georgia. Nathan Francis Wyatt, age 39, was sentenced after he pleaded guilty in federal court in St. Louis to conspiring to commit aggravated identity theft and computer fraud. He was also ordered to pay about $1.5 million in restitution. Well, that's going to be pretty hard when you only paid 75 cents an hour to fight fires. Federal prosecutors said the dark overlord stole medical records, client files, and personal information from the companies, then demanded between $75,000 and $300,000 worth of Bitcoin to return the information. None of the companies paid the ransom, but the conspiracy did cost them because of the intrusion and release of data, federal prosecutor Laura Kathleen Bernstein said. Wyatt set up a phone account and accounts on Twitter and PayPal that were used to communicate and receive money, she said. Wow, you could never follow someone with that kind of information, now could you? Wyatt apologized. Of course he would. He's going to prison for 5 years, and that's hard. He apologized during the hearing held via Zoom, saying that he was on medication for mental problems, and that led him to make bad decisions. Well, that's a very white thing for him to say now, isn't it? I can promise you that I'm out of that world, he said, voice breaking. I don't want to see another computer for the rest of my life. Okay. His lawyer, Baroka Morrison, noted that Wyatt did not orchestrate the hacks and is the only hacker who has been identified. Well, you know, a dupe is a dupe. And if you're part of a conspiracy, well, the dupe usually gets it now, don't they? You dupe. Bernstein said Wyatt's actions helped the other hackers remain anonymous and that his phone account was used to send threatening text messages to relatives of victims. Wyatt was indicted in 2017, but he was not extradited to the U.S. until last year after British lawyers fought to keep him out of this country. He had served 14 months in a British prison after pleading guilty to 22 charges after he was accused of demanding money from the owner of a hacked computer and then using stolen credit cards. Tom Hayes of the Associated Press brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A New York City police officer was charged yesterday, Monday, with being an intelligence asset for the Chinese government who agreed to spy on U.S. supporters of the Tibetan independence movement. I am not going to be able to pronounce this fellow's name, but here goes. Bema J. Angwong, a naturalized U.S. citizen from Tibet, worked since 2018 as an agent for the People's Republic of China in its effort to suppress the movement, according to a criminal complaint filed in Brooklyn Federal Court. It says he secretly worked for unnamed handlers from the Chinese consulate in New York. There was no allegation that Angwong compromised national security or New York Police Department operations. Well, still, he was considered the definition of an insider threat, William Sweeney, head of the FBI's New York office, said in a statement. Angwong, age 33, was ordered held without bail at an initial court hearing yesterday, Monday. There was no immediate response to a phone message seeking comment from his lawyer because I think his lawyer was pretty busy. Along with being a NYPD officer, Angwong is a staff sergeant, here it goes, in the U.S. Army Reserve, who was given security clearances by the Department of Defense, according to court papers that accuse him of lying during a background check that got him that status. Ang Wang's job as a spy for China was to locate potential intelligence sources and identify potential threats to the People's Republic of China in the New York metropolitan area. He was also expected to provide consulate officials access to senior NYPD officials through invitations to official NYPD events, the court papers said. The papers say the evidence includes intercepted communications between Ang Wang and a consulate official, someone Ang Wang called Big Brother and Boss, about how to identify dissenters in the independence movement. They don't believe in Tibetan Buddhism, Ang Wang told the handler, according to the paper. When the consulate extends a helping hand to them, they will feel the warmth of the motherland. How wonderful would that be? Wow, this is almost like a movie. At one point, Ang Wang suggested that issuing 10-year visas to Tibetans in the United States would help recruit other spies. Ang Wang has worked at an NYPD precinct in Queens as a community liaison officer, authorities said. Before becoming a citizen, he sought asylum by claiming he had been arrested and tortured in China, partly because of his Tibetan ethnicity. Oh, like a Manchurian NYPD officer. An advocacy group, International Campaign for Tibet, said in a statement that the arrest shows that the Chinese Communist Party is engaged in malign operations to suppress dissent, not only in Tibet, but any place in the world where Tibetans are free to express themselves. All right, let's get to our break. And when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Julia Rosen. How much colder was it at the peak of the last ice age? That's a question scientists have been trying to answer for decades. And now they have a new best guess. 11 degrees Fahrenheit. That's a lot, especially considering it's a global average. Parts of North America were much colder.
First of all, large areas of the Northeast were completely under ice, so that would have been pretty chilly. You wouldn't be living there. But even here in the West, right, where we weren't covered by an ice sheet, it would have been something like 20 degrees Fahrenheit lower.
Jessica Tierney, a paleoclimatologist at the University of Arizona. Tierney and her colleagues spent years compiling information about Earth's climate at the height of the last glacial period, about 20,000 years ago.
So we obviously don't have thermometers in the glacial period, so we have to instead look for these kinds of stand-in indicators.
One kind of stand-in is plankton that lived in the ocean and got preserved in marine sediments. Scientists use these fossils to infer past ocean temperatures by studying changes in the chemistry of their shells and in the kinds of fats and other compounds they produced. Tierney and her team then combine these data with a climate model to give a full picture of glacial conditions.
It's actually a technique used every day in weather forecasting. What's new is we're using it for the past, not the future, so we're actually, hindcasting, if you will, rather than forecasting.
The study is in the journal Nature. The findings suggest that the last ice age was significantly colder than scientists thought, and that matters today.
The reason that, we want to know how cold the last ice age is, beyond the fact that it's just a cool thing to know, is that we can actually use it to understand a quantity called climate sensitivity.
Climate sensitivity is a measure of how much the planet warms in response to rising greenhouse gases. In this long-ago case, we know how much carbon dioxide concentrations increased between the last ice age and pre-industrial period from air bubbles trapped in ancient ice. And now we have Tierney's new results on the temperature difference between glacial and interglacial conditions. Together, these data suggest that low-end estimates of climate sensitivity, in which greenhouse gases don't cause much warming, are unlikely to be correct.
If we had low climate sensitivity, then we would be less worried about, what all the CO2 emissions are going to do. And so we can kind of rule that possibility out. I suppose that's not great news.
Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Julia Rosen.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. It doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution, and you'll get a wondiferous pair of Netroots radio stickers for application to your backpack, your bumper sticker, or your banjo. Well, it's up to you which backpack you want to put it on. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage, because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
The Trump administration has just received permission to deport 400,000 lawful immigrants. I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. On September 14th, the federal Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled, 2 judges to 1, that the Trump administration has the power to deport 400,000 lawful immigrants who have what's called TPS, Temporary Protected Status. TPS, a program implemented by President George H.W. Bush in 1990, has been granted to people invited to the United States due to civil war or natural or man-made disasters in their home countries. 10 countries now comprise TPS, including El Salvador, Haiti, Honduras, Nepal, Nicaragua, and Sudan. The 400,000 includes many people who have lived in the United States for years and years, sometimes decades. Today, during the COVID crisis, 100,000 are deemed essential workers in healthcare and food service. Many have families that would be ripped apart if the ruling were implemented, there being some 200,000 United States citizen children whose parents have TPS. Thankfully, this devastating decision is not the end of the line. There can be an appeal to the full Court of Appeals and to the Supreme Court. And the Trump administration has agreed to not deport people from 6 of the TPS countries until 2021. And a different administration could maintain TPS instead of abolishing it. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU, because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1985. That was the year that the first Farm Aid concert was held in Champaign, Illinois. A retrospective article in Time magazine reported, quote, "In the 1980s, American farmers were hit hard by what were, at the time, the worst economic conditions since the Great Depression. Droughts ravaged the fields, property values plunged, loan interest rates soared, thousands were forced off their land and faced foreclosure and bankruptcy. Farmer suicide rose at alarming rates. The idea to use music to aid the farmers began with Bob Dylan at an event to help African famine victims. Then musicians Willie Nelson, John Mellencamp, and Neil Young took up his idea and ran with it. 50 musicians took the stage at the University of Illinois football stadium. The organizers were joined by such headliners as Bob Dylan, Johnny Cash, Billy Joel, Tom Petty, Roy Orbison, Bonnie Raitt, Kenny Rogers, Joni Mitchell, the Beach Boys, Jimmy Buffett, Bon Jovi, Foreigner, and more. The musicians played for 14 hours to a rain-soaked crowd of nearly 80,000. A telethon also helped to bring in donations. It raised $9 million for farm relief. More importantly, it helped raise national awareness of the dire economic conditions faced by many small farmers. Farm Aid has continued to hold concerts for small farmers. In 2015, the 30th anniversary concert was held in Chicago. As an organization, Farm Aid has raised more than $50 million for small farmers.
Now, live for Farm Aid and a concert for America, here's Willie Nelson.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
I just can't wait to get on the road again.
I read the news today, oh boy.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
The Justice Department on Monday labeled the cities of Portland, Oregon, New York, and Seattle as anarchist jurisdictions that could lose federal funding for failing to protect the public from violence and destruction of property. Trump issued a memorandum earlier this month calling for a review of ways to block funding for local governments that the administration thinks should do more to prevent violent protests over racial injustice. In a statement, the Attorney General wrote, "We cannot allow federal tax dollars to be wasted," and he called for city leaders to, quote, "reverse course and become serious about protecting citizens." New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio, Portland Mayor Ted Wheeler, and Seattle Mayor Jenny Durkin, all Democrats, said Trump was playing cheap political games with congressionally directed funds. It was just a few days ago that the Centers for Disease Control posted guidance that the coronavirus could commonly spread through lingering droplets in the air and travel further than 6 feet. Well, on Monday, the agency abruptly removed that guidance from its website, reverting to its previous statement that the virus spreads mainly from person to person. The CDC said recent updates were posted in error and that it's reversing recommendations on airborne transmission. Huh? A CDC official said the virus can still spread through the air, but that isn't thought to be the primary way it's transmitted. This confusion is just the latest sign of how Trump's administration has mishandled the COVID-19 response. And of course, Trump admitted to Woodward back on February 7th that he knew it was transmitted through the air.
It goes through air, Bob. That's always tougher than the touch. You know, the touch, you don't have to touch things, right? But the air, you just breathe the air. That's how it's passed. And so that's a very tricky one. That's a very delicate one. It's also more deadly than your strenuous flus.
So there's that. Well, on Monday night, Trump said that he expected to announce his nominee to fill the late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg's seat on the Supreme Court by Friday or Saturday. Trump said his shortlist was down to 4 or 5 finalists. 2 of them are Amy Coney Barrett, a federal appellate judge and conservative who has the backing of religious conservatives and advocates on the far right, and Barbara Lagoa, a conservative judge about whom it's said her Cuban-American heritage could help Trump politically in her home state of Florida. Meanwhile, Ruth Bader Ginsburg's casket will be on public view on the Supreme Court steps on Wednesday and Thursday. Then she'll lie in state in the Capitol Statutory Hall on Friday, becoming the first woman to receive that honor. Meanwhile, Donald Trump and Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell are wasting no time pushing for the confirmation of their new nominee before Election Day, and they appear to have lined up enough votes. Democrats insist that the winner of the election between Trump and Joe Biden should pick the next justice, saying it's shamefully hypocritical for Republicans to rush to confirm Ginsburg's replacement with the election just weeks away after refusing to consider former President Barack Obama's nomination of Merrick Garland back in 2016, 9 months before Election Day. So far, only 2 Republicans, Senators Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins, have voiced opposition to taking up the nomination before the election. It's unclear if any others will follow. So government funding officially runs out next Wednesday, September 30th. House Democrats on Monday released a bill that would fund the government until December 11th. Speaker Nancy Pelosi saying Democrats want to get the legislation approved before that September 30th deadline to avert a catastrophic shutdown in the middle of the ongoing pandemic. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell said the Democrats' proposal was not acceptable to the Republicans, pointing out that the bill didn't include additional farm aid that Republicans want. McConnell tweeted that it, quote, shamefully leaves out key relief and support that American farmers need. This is no time to add insult to injury and defund help for farmers in rural America. The potential impasse came as tensions mounted on Capitol Hill over filling Ruth Bader Ginsburg's Supreme Court seat, as Congress has done nothing in 4 months regarding a COVID relief package. When Congress passed the CARES Act all the way back in March, it included a $1 billion fund for the Pentagon to build up the country's supplies of medical equipment and PPE. Well, we now learn that that money has instead been mostly funneled to defense contractors and used for making things such as jet engine parts, body armor, and dress uniforms. The CARES Act designated the money to, quote, prevent, prepare for, and respond to the coronavirus. But a few weeks later, the Defense Department began reshaping how it would dole out the money in a way that represented a major departure from the original intent of Congress. And now Robert Redfield, the director of the Centers for Disease Control, said in Senate testimony last week that states desperately need $6 billion to distribute vaccines to Americans early next year. And there remains a severe shortage of N95 masks at many U.S. hospitals. These are the types of problems that money was originally intended to address. Another week, another tell-all book. This time it's from Andrew Weissman, one of Robert Mueller's top deputies. It's due out next Tuesday and says that the investigation team led by Mueller didn't do everything it could to determine what happened in the 2016 election. Weissman writes that the team shied away from subpoenaing Trump and taking other steps to scrutinize his finances out of fear that he would fire them. Well, we blew through the alphabet, so now we're using the Greek alphabet to name storms. And as if they haven't gotten hit enough yet this season, Tropical Storm Beta made landfall late Monday on the Texas Gulf Coast near the Matagorda Peninsula, threatening to drench some areas with up to 15 inches of rain. Beta is the 23rd storm of this unusually busy 2020 hurricane season, which doesn't wrap up until November 30th. Yeesh. And that's just a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, and I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com, and please click on that donate button.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 58 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting temperatures nearly the same as yesterday, about 78 to 80. Cloudy skies early, then partly cloudy this afternoon. Winds will be out of the southwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Partly cloudy skies overnight. Lows near the low to mid 50s. Winds out of the southwest at 5 to 10. And then tomorrow we should have nearly the same temperature, about 78 to 80, with intervals of clouds and sunshine. And winds will be out of the southeast, then shifting to the west-southwest at 10 to 15 miles per hour. Coronavirus cases that are confirmed here in Jackson County, down here in southern Oregon, have now risen to 1,057. And our deceased have increased now to 4 confirmed cases. And deceased, though the deceased number is quite low, because we're not getting all the information as yet. Pollen is rated at none, so that's rather good. And the air quality is rated good at 24 parts per million, so that's good. and the daytime UV index is moderate at 5. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 30.04 inches. Visibility is up to 10 miles, and that relative humidity is at 94%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 77 degrees and sunny. Paris is 78 and sunny. Rome is 80 degrees and partly cloudy with an electrical thunderstorm warning that could affect the electrical grid, so do take care. Kyiv is 75 and fair. Kabul is 71 and fair. Hong Kong is 80 degrees and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 70 degrees with rain. Sydney, Australia is 68 and clear. San Francisco, California is 58 and partly cloudy. And New York is 62 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased, and these people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property. And these people positively live around the world. Crispian Balmer and Gavin Jones of Reuters bring us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. Italy's right-wing opposition leader, Matteo Salvini, failed to make the breakthroughs he had hoped for in regional elections. As the count proceeded, the center-left Democratic Party, known as the PD, looked sure to hold on to 3 regions it already rules, while the right made just one gain and stayed in charge of 2 other regions. Earlier this month, League leader Salvini said he was aiming for a clean sweep. Italian sovereign debt spreads narrowed on the early vote count, with investors hoping the results of the September 2021 ballot would bolster stability at a time when the government is battling the economic slump triggered by the coronavirus. Culture Minister and prominent PD official Dario Franceschini said the result bolstered the party and its leader, Nicola Zingaretti. Now that he and the PD are stronger, the government can press ahead. There are growing signs Salvini is losing some of his appeal to Italians. The League remains the country's most popular party, but has declined steady in opinion polls over the last year, along with Salvini's personal approval ratings.
Je te donne, c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mais automne, quand les feuilles tombent partout, si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Anonymous worker bees at Reuters bring us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny told Russia to hand over the clothes he was wearing when he fell into a coma last month and accused Moscow of withholding an important piece of evidence in his case. The outspoken opponent of Putin said his clothes were taken away from him before he was flown to Germany for treatment from Siberia after he became violently ill on a domestic flight. Berlin says tests in Germany France and Sweden have determined he was poisoned with a Novichok nerve agent, and the West has demanded an explanation from Russia. Moscow has said it has yet to see evidence of a crime and has declined to open an investigation so far, and the Kremlin has denied any involvement. Before they allowed me to be taken to Germany, they took all my clothes and sent me completely naked, Navalny wrote on his website. Considering Novichok was found on my body and that infection through contact is very likely, my clothes are an important piece of evidence. I demand that my clothes be carefully packed in a plastic bag and returned to me, he demanded. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we'll meet up tomorrow for Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.